Now back to the course being so hard and you had to like solve the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that would or like your success in doing that would you put on having a caddy that you could talk through each shot with? Because I noticed pretty much there wasn't a shot that went by that you didn't at least consult with your caddy in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always. I'm a firm believer. If you have someone that you trust on the bag, now obviously this is the first time I've had Michael, which was the caddy
Yeah.
that I had at DDO. It was the first time I met him. The first time I had him on the bag. Shout out to the collector group on Facebook. I can get a good sense of someone really quickly on like whether or not how we're gonna vibe.
Yeah.
Really quick. I have a pretty good job of like, is this someone that's just gonna hold my bag and kind of like give me a fist pump if I throw a good shot or whatever, or is this someone that I feel like I could open up and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And
Yeah.
just have someone else hear, listen to it. I don't think necessarily you want someone out there like holding your hand to where you're just like, I don't know what to do every shot and they tell you and then you try to do that.
Yeah.
But I think it's very beneficial of having someone that you can just like talk it out. And you can be like, a good example is Jonesboro. Hole 11. Easy par 4. You go a little chip hyzer out and to the left and then a chip forehand into the basket. Kind of very unique hole. Well, I sawed off my tee shot and got like into the trouble. What I should have done is pitched out, thrown and got up and down, made par and move on. What I tried to do was throw this like heroic shot through this tight little 3-foot gap up and over all these trees and then try to get like a putt at it. And it was funny. Chris, my buddy, was on the bag at the time and he misunderstood what I was saying. He thought I was playing for just getting it out and chipping it and then laying up. And after the fact, I told him like, bro, I feel like you should have maybe said something. Like, that's a crazy idea. Like, I was joking with him because, again, as a player, you have to hold yourself responsible. It's not your caddy's fault. Whatever you end up doing and deciding to do, that's on you.
Yeah.
So I kind of jokingly said that. And he's like, bro, I had no idea. He's like, wait, you were trying to go for the pin? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I had no idea. I thought you were just laying up. I thought you just juiced it. I was like, no. So I think like having someone where you can be like, am I crazy for trying this? And if they're like, yeah, I would never try that. Probably not the right play.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought that was interesting because so many players still either whether they choose not to or like I know some players say it just gets in their head, but I feel like in a round like that, it's crucial to just have someone like you're saying, even if you don't talk to them, just to know I can bounce this off them. So you look at a shot and you're like, should I get this aggressive? And you can talk to them and they can walk you through, or even if you have them checking scores and be like, hey, just let me know if X, Y, or Z happens so you don't have to constantly be looking at it or so on and so forth.
I think this goes back to, again, like what we talked about of like this tournament is a real good indicator for not everyone, obviously, because I'm sure some people just had bad weeks. Like I could have easily had a bad week. I played well. I played very well. But I could have easily had a bad week. Timing could have been off. I could have really struggled out there. So it's not indicative for everyone that didn't shoot well, but I think you can look at some of the scores and see some like, yeah, maybe that person is struggling a little bit on the mental side. And I think what you just said is a perfect example of like where you were saying like, yeah, some people like gets to them having a caddy or whatever. Like in what scenario would you not want to have a coach with you if you could?
Yeah.
Like you look at tennis, there are rules against, because the coaches are there, the trainers are there, like your family and stuff a lot of times are there and they're in like the coach's box. Like, and it's a lot of times like real close kind of to the players. And it is against the rules for the coach to be giving any sort of instruction to the player. And there's been people that have been caught like hand signals or whatever it may be, right? In what scenario, like if they could have like, hey man, like if they could like run over and like get some coaching or whatever, every tennis player would. Look at UFC in between every round, boxing in between every round. What happens? The trainers and stuff jump in, let the person know. There's very few scenarios. Basketball, literally every sport I can think of that has some sort of coach that you can utilize. Every sport utilizes it. when they can't, right? Tour de France, what do they have? They literally have people in your ear telling you your timing, where people are at, letting you know, like, hey, we're coming up soon to give you a refuel, like constant information. I just don't know how that wouldn't be effective. And that's something that I feel like if that is an issue with you, because I actually was going through some really difficult mental troubles in my game, right? And I feel like me tackling it and realizing like that is a problem and I need to figure it out, it has led to me to, like, Jonesboro wasn't the greatest result, but I had some good rounds and I definitely had some good scores. And obviously this last week trending up, which is awesome. But I feel like, if that is like a mental part, so like if people are watching this and they can be like, yeah, I don't like looking at scores, or I don't like having like a caddy, whatever it may be that you're struggling with mental wise, like instead of just saying like that's a flaw of yours and being like, I have to deal with it, if you're able to somehow figure out how to attack it and fix it, you're going to be much better off.
Yeah.
And I would say like the caddy is just something where it's like, if you can get someone on your bag that you can vibe with and just have someone else out there, because you shouldn't be relying on other people, like other players.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that, and it sometimes creates some like awkward situations. So if you could have your caddy out there and that's the person you bounce ideas off of or talk to make you not nervous or whatever it may be, I mean, I think it's so beneficial. I think it's very beneficial.
Yeah, I've always felt that way. I've had a caddy maybe 3 or 4 rounds ever, and even like my performance in those rounds weren't the best rounds of my life, but I felt like I didn't make a bad decision because every decision was so well thought out. Whereas like I've played some singles rounds where I don't have a caddy, and I like go look back after a round, I'm like, what was I thinking there? But then like at collegiate nationals is the best example of when I've had caddies, and like I can, whenever I am doubting a shot, instead of just having to think through it myself, I can just be like, hey, what would you do between these two? And sometimes they're like, I wouldn't do either of these, man. Look at this gap right here. I'm like, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
But they're standing back and they see stuff that I don't see. And then after the round, I always feel way better because I didn't take a shot that I didn't think through. I think that's especially true on a course like this versus, because there's some courses like Memorial. You brought that up earlier. Memorial, you can get through without ever thinking through a shot.
No.
Because you just chuck it.
That's honestly a lot of courses.
Yeah, you just chuck it.
No
and you
thinking
don't have
involved.
To, yeah, it's just muscle memory.
Just throw the shot.
Whereas a course like this, what it sounds like and what it looked like watching is if you weren't focused on every shot, scores would pile up.
Yes.
And like, I mean, I think we saw Albert Tam. I'm pretty sure I saw him take a 14. Not to single him out, but I was just looking through. A lot of people were taking a high number on that bowl.
There was a lot of double digit scores.
Stuff like that. One or two things happen. You either gave up and like we're like, no, I'm getting this disc in bounds. I don't care what it takes. Or it's just decision making where you get off that hole. Because if you've watched our videos recently, I've had this happen several times. You get off that hole and you're like, what was I doing? I blacked out. Next thing I know, I have a 10 on my scorecard. Like, if I would have just thought for a second on any of those, I think that's where a caddy comes in.
Yeah, I would say two things just to wrap up the caddy thing. The first one being just not having a bag on your back for 3 or 4 rounds.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that doesn't somehow help just you physically feeling better throughout the entire round. And then the second thing is going back to when I kicked you off my bag.
Heck yeah.
Right? Like that.
I'm still the only caddy of yours that's been kicked off the bag.
That situation, like that's what I'm talking about. Where I was when I kicked you off is in a spot where I want to be able to blame everything and anything other than myself. I didn't want to take the blame that I'm throwing bad shots and I'm playing bad because of me. I wanted to figure out everything else that I could do.
Yeah.
And people do this with scores too, right? You look at the scores. Let's say, and I have a funny story about the scores here in a second, but let's say you go and you look at the scores and you're like, holy crap, I'm like below the cut line. And then you end up playing bad the next couple holes. You're just going to mentally say like, the reason I played bad is because I looked at the scores and I saw I was below the cut line.
Yeah.
Versus actually figuring out why did you actually play bad? Like what was what caused you to throw bad shots? Like what was it? And trying to find like an excuse that isn't on you and is on some other kind of thing of like, well, I had a caddy today and I didn't shoot well, so clearly it's the caddy's fault. Like, I need to play without a caddy because I play way better without a caddy. Like when you start doing stuff like that, it's almost like you're superstitious of where you're making all these other claims, and you want to be in a situation where it's just like, yo, there's going to be some days where I suck. The question is, how do I get through that round and get the best score possible on my scorecard at the end, knowing that today's not really my day? And if you can do that, then you can kind of survive and stay alive and still kind of be in the mix.
Yeah.
Funny thing about